Alright, so I am Riyad Merrifield.
Hi, I'm Lena Edwards.
Yes, and I'm Jeff Gahris. I'm your Forest Preserve Commissioner in District 4. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you so
Pleasure
much
to be
for
here.
coming.
Yes.
So one of the questions we have is if you could tell us a little more about yourself, like family, what you're planning to do with the district and things like that.
Well, the first district, I think the first question is really who I am, where I came from. I mean, I come from Ohio, a rural area, and small towns, and I grew up with a lot of native, well, just a landscape with a lot of trees and fields and things. So I grew up really exposed to wildlife and nature. And then I went to Miami University and got some degrees, including an environmental science degree, a master's degree, and so I developed a strong interest in environmental issues. And I pursued a profession that ultimately took me to Chicago area to work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And so now I reached a point where I had retired from that and was doing other interesting things environmentally related and volunteer work and everything, but people would come to me and say, you should run and become a commissioner because you can do good things. And so I'm excited about that because I ran 2 years ago, I got elected, and so I can pursue some interesting objectives. So you want me to discuss that as well. So, and I think there's a lot of excitement going on right now because we're making some infrastructure investments, I think that are overdue, and it's part of a master planning process. And it allows me to insert the idea of sustainability. Like everything we do, we should be thinking about the quality of the environment locally, the air quality, addressing climate change. And so we've actually been installing up to 4 solar panel arrays. I mean, some are over 10 years old, but the last couple of years we've been installing more solar, and there's potential for more of that because that seems to be well suited for our operations and how we do things.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then what makes you the strongest candidate for this position?
I think I just have the right background for it. It's common for people to run for office who have no real connection, no personal story or profession that connects them to the office they're seeking. So they come in totally green. I've had, should have turned my phone off, but I've had like 30, 40 years of experience dealing with government agencies, dealing with community groups, dealing with individuals in a setting where we're trying to improve their lives. And so I think that's a very positive attribute for me. Having a degree, an engineering degree plus a science degree means I can understand the mission of the Forest Preserve District kind of readily.
Yeah.
And I come with an agenda that's suitable. I understand what the Forest Preserve needs to do and how to talk to people about here's what we can do to make it better and listen to people. I think it's very important to have listening skills. So
Yes.
I've been in the inner city of Detroit talking to community groups like how to make their quality of life better. And there's been some meaningful experiences I've had throughout my life. And I think actually at this point, being a Forest Preserve Commissioner is the ultimate. It's the best job I've ever had. So I'm excited to be part of this.
Yes. That's awesome.
Yes.
So we've heard a lot about you, about what you're saying, about how you are,
Mm-hmm.
why you think you're the strongest candidate. And so what do you think, what about the Forest Preserve that's like interesting for the citizens of DuPage County? Like for the citizens who maybe like are kind of interested, like what would you tell them?
Well, I think first of all, they want to understand that there's a lot of open space. It's like 11% of the county. So if you want to get out and get away from everyday life, you want to have a relaxing walk, and it actually has health benefits. It lowers your blood pressure. It's great for seniors to get out because they need to stretch their legs. It helps their cardiovascular system. They've been doing a lot of work recently on understanding that, and the hospitals are actually promoting people to go out and walk. And or bicycle or whatever else you can do. So there's we have a great trail system, and we're improving that so it's easier to get connected to the trails either by walking or biking. And horseback riding, there's a lot of horseback riding opportunities. So there's just a lot out there, and there's some history too. So if you want to explore the history of certain lands, like St. James Farm and the Peabody Estate where you have an old mansion, and just a variety of things like that. So
That's nice.
yes.
Is there like a main thing or like a main topic, something specific that you want that you'd want to accomplish, like if you get reelected?
Well, there's a lot of things going on with the Forest Preserves. There's a lot of activities. We have a master plan, but I think the best part is something that was buried in the bottom of the master plan called sustainability. Like we're going to work on a sustainability plan, and we're actually we just launched that, and it's going to be an evaluation of everything we're doing in ways we can do it better. Like if there's gaps in our activities, things that we could do better, and that would actually mean better performing buildings, more resilience against climate change, what changes in the weather, like are we reducing our carbon footprint? There's just a lot we can grapple with that. We even have several landfills, like are the landfills being operated, or they're not operated anymore, they've been closed, but eventually they'll be transitioning to more recreational opportunities. We're gonna make sure they're safe, we're gonna make sure there's no leachate leaking into our water. And we have a fund set aside to help manage that. So it's kind of unique to have landfills in a forest preserve. I don't know, but that's part of the history. It's what we have, and so I think there's a lot of exciting things that we could do if we look at things systematically, and that would include things you wouldn't normally think about, like how accessible are the trails? How do people? We're even looking at that because 20% of the population has disabilities. So I think we're going to involve outside stakeholders, like people with disabilities, like, are we doing the best job we can in a most sustainable way going forward? Is this the best we can do for the county? Yes.
So sustainability is like a big thing for you.
Yeah, definitely is.
Okay. And then what are some of the recent problems that the Forest Preserve might be struggling with or just having like on the board? And then what are some ways that you think that you can help with that?
Well, I think more recently, I think some of the biggest problems have been how to balance the need for infrastructure work, like Willowbrook. It became woefully out of date. And I think we boards recognize that. So ultimately, that was part of this master planning process. We had 2 phases to improve that. And so that meant actually adding a new building and making it larger to meet modern veterinary standards, to meet the increased demand for animals that are coming there to be rehabilitated. And then an educational component of that to explain to the public what we're doing to the animals and how we get them back into the wild. I mean, things like that, that costs money, and then we found a way to invest in it with cheap money when interest rates were low, so we issued a bond. And we had a unique opportunity, so it's carpe diem, seize the day and do it, and the public is very much involved with that, and there were a lot of public input on that. So, that's kind of a challenge because right now we have inflation and we have infrastructure, not infrastructure, but getting parts and things, the supply chain disruptions, that's been a big challenge. So it's a matter of managing our budget and planning for issues like that, and then moving forward, like making sure we provide all the services that people want, and making sure we're improving the environment there, improving the natural areas, and doing that in a logical, rational way going forward, so we have a long-term plan for sustaining our operations.
Yes. And then another question that I feel a lot of people have now, just like with the burning work and everything that happened in the forest preserves, just like preserve the plants and doing all of that, how do you guys work to detain that and to make sure that it like stays in one area? And then another question that I feel like a lot of people have is like the impact on the animals' habitat. Does that affect them in any way or no?
Well, it's a fascinating question. Because you want to do it in a small area. You take let's say a lot of burning might be done in prairies, so you have an area and there's a team of people that are highly trained, and so you have ways of containing the fire so it covers one area, and you do that so that wildlife, which will be, all of a sudden it's on, but they've adapted to this, they dealt with it for millennia, and so what they do is they flee to another area that we're not burning, and so you have the transition of let's say insects and birds and everything else just move to another, rabbits, you see them scurrying out. I've been to these things and it's fascinating to watch. So you do it in segments in a controlled way, and you have trained people that know how to manage fire. So, and if you do it right, there's not a whole lot of smoke either. So.
Okay.
And that keeps that actually rejuvenates the prairie, and so that creates more habitat going forward. So it's actually enhances the wildlife.
And then how often do you guys do that usually?
Not more than once a year. I think they rotate. You know, it's usually done in the spring or fall, but you know, when the conditions are right, and you have to make sure the weather's just perfect.
Yes. All of that comes into play.
Yes.
So you were talking a little bit about inflation, a little bit about stuff like that, and how do you plan to like budget wisely regarding the forest reserve, and like what sort of areas would you like want to target with like the money in the budget that you have?
Yeah. Well, I think periodically we have to do restoration work, and you can't restore all. I mean, there's a lot of invasive plants that we have to deal with, so you don't want to deal with all of it at once, because that disrupts the wildlife again. So you do sections, and you sort of plan that out ahead of time. Like in infrastructure work, we have some buildings that need some maintenance, like the Donata House. And inflation's an issue right now, but we try to manage that, and we plan for that, and so that's part of the budget. You just work that into the budget, like, okay, but we don't always know. We tend to over budget, so we end up underspending a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that is a challenge right now. But when you look at the Donata House, and the nice thing about that is there's a private nonprofit entity that operates it, and they have events there, and it's a revenue stream for them. And that helps pay for the infrastructure work. So you sort of work with that group, and by doing the right maintenance on the Donata House, that makes it a desirable venue for weddings and stuff. And so the revenue stream helps address that inflation issue.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time, for answering these questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Great to be here.